Hey everyone! Welcome to The Young and the Restless. I'm Jane, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love Young and the Restless, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, let's dive right in. The Young and the Restless spoilers for the week of July 21st to 25th state that Kyle Abbott and Audra Charles will experience double panic, while Sharon Newman continues with a rescue mission. Billy Abbott will also unleash his anger, so here's what YNR fans should expect. For starters, the whodunit will continue in Nice, where Chance Chancellor will investigate additional clues and suspicions. It will be difficult to traverse, but Chance will do everything he can to find out who killed Damian Kane. Since Nick Newman is being set up for the murder, Sharon will play rescuer with some daring moves. Will Sharon help Nick prove his innocence and shift the blame on someone else? Lily Winter's heart may get increasingly conflicted as the story progresses. Kane Ashby may eventually corner Lily for a private talk. It's easy to imagine Kane forcing Lily to look into his eyes and declare she knows he's innocent deep down. Of course, knowledge of Damian's dismal fate is on the verge of spreading, which could explain why Audra and Kyle go too far. Audra may get vulnerable as she worries about the anguish Amy Lewis and Nate Hastings may experience. Seeing true emotion from Audra, rather than just an act, could seal the deal on Kyle's blossoming affection for her. Whatever the case, it won't be long before Kyle and Audra enter prohibited area. The week of July 21st to 25th will be fraught with anxiety, as both Audra and Kyle will undoubtedly come to regret their actions. It could lead to Kyle and Audra reaching an understanding on how to deal with their shared betrayal. Audra may put her vibrante goals on hold for the time being in order to protect her relationship with Nate. Kyle may also be determined to keep Claire Newman in the dark, thus a covert agreement with Audra is most likely on the cards. Billy will struggle after a difficult setback. It appears like Jack Abbott is preparing to withdraw his Abbott Communications sponsorship, leaving Billy furious. Jack may even engage in a power maneuver that involves taking the firm away from Billy entirely. Regardless, Billy will be feeling vindictive shortly, so stay tuned for updates on how he plans to respond. According to The Young and the Restless spoilers, the CBS soap will continue to feature fiery confrontations and big revelations. As the train screeched to a halt in the outskirts of Genoa City, lightning flashed across the dark sky. Rain pelted the windows, as if nature itself was agitated by the tangled turmoil unfolding inside. Sharon's abduction had sent shockwaves through everyone aboard, especially Nick. He had just discovered the murder weapon in his own sleeping car, discolored and wrapped in a towel that had previously belonged to his exercise bag, and the realization crushed him like a weight on his chest. It wasn't enough that he'd been framed or that whispers were already circulating in the Newman camp, now Sharon was disappeared. The timing was too convenient and organized. Nick's panic went to wrath, then to concentration. He knew she was stolen, this wasn't just a disappearance. He dashed along the corridors, searching cabins and yelling commands at the personnel, each second felt like a lifetime. Meanwhile, Kyle Abbott and Audra Charles gathered in a dim corner of the dining car, apparently terrified. Their secret, whatever they were urgently attempting to keep hidden, was about to be exposed. Audra had already received a threatening message on her burner phone, which she never showed anyone. "The next body will be yours," it stated. Kyle had attempted to calm her, but his own face had turned ghostly white. Because it wasn't only about them anymore. The events whirling around them, Sharon's disappearance, Nick's framing, and suspicions about Damian's true past, were all converging faster than they could untangle. Kyle could feel the walls closing in, like dominoes dropping one after the other, each secret asking to be revealed. What if the footage got out? What if someone discovered the ledger? What if Harrison learned about any of this? While Kyle and Audra grappled with the ramifications of their decisions and their close-knit friendship began to fray, Billy Abbott reached his boiling point. He stormed down the aisle as if possessed. His hands were clenched, his jaw fixed, and his eyes blazed with a rage that no one dared to cross. Earlier that evening, he overheard a chat between Audra and Kane, a name he had never trusted. Billy was furious when Kane mentioned a leverage file that Audra had mishandled. But when Sharon went missing, Billy's protective instincts surged in tenfold. He had always cared about Sharon, even if not romantically, and the notion of her being involved in some dirty game angered him. As he surged past a swarm of terrified passengers, his thoughts raced through every scenario. Could Damien be pulling strings behind the scenes? Could Audra and Kyle have played him again, as they did with the Jabot IPO rumors? Kyle's burning left a stinging recollection. It was time to quit playing nice. Billy barged inside their cabin, slamming the door so violently that it rang down the corridor. "Do you think I don't see what's happening?" he hissed, pointing at both of them like a cat assessing its prey. "If anything happens to Sharon, if this stunt injures anyone else, I'll make sure you both pay the price." Audra protested, but Billy wasn't having it. "Save it. I want the truth. Right now." Meanwhile, Sharon was far from the train, tied to a chair in what appeared to be an abandoned maintenance hut in the woods. The air smelled like mildew and oil. Her hands ached, and her wrists chafed raw from the rough rope. But her eyes remained defiant. Whoever took her had not anticipated her fighting energy. She had managed to cut her binding somewhat with a loose nail protruding from the chair's base, and with each agonizing wiggle, she felt closer to freedom. Her thoughts turned to Nick, his face, voice, and stubbornness. She knew he'd come for her. But she was also aware that whoever did this was motivated by more than fear. They wanted a message delivered. Footsteps heard outside, slow and deliberate. A shadow moved by the dusty glass and paused. Sharon froze. The door creaked open to reveal a figure dressed in black. But as the light from a lightning flash revealed his face, Sharon's eyes widened, not in fear, but in disbelief. "You?" she gasped. The man, someone from her past, long thought to be dead, only smirked and tilted his head. "You always thought the worst was behind you," he said softly. "But Genoa City forgot what it owed me." Back on the train, Nick's quest led him to the freight compartment. He heard a tiny buzz, like to a phone vibrating against metal. He approached a stack of boxes and discovered Sharon's phone, buried beneath several blankets. The screen was shattered, with blood smeared in one corner. A single message glowed, "Tick-tock, lover boy." Nick's heart sank. His thoughts turned to every enemy they'd ever created. He dashed back toward the main car, this time headed directly for Victor. The Newman patriarch sat in a special lounge car, guarded by his security personnel, his countenance stern. Victor leaned closer, steepling his fingers, as Nick explained everything about the weapon, Sharon, and the message. "This is calculated," he stated bitterly. "They're baiting you, and they're using her to do it." Nick looked startled. "You expected something like this to happen?" Victor exhaled. "There are adversaries who do not forget, Nicholas. And some payments are due when you least expect it." Meanwhile, Lily Winters received a call from Billy that caused her to spill her wine glass in surprise. She had just arrived at a nice inn, hoping to escape the chaos for a few days. But one glimpse at her phone, and she realized everything had gone wrong. Billy's voice quivered with barely controlled rage. "Lily, Sharon has been stolen. Kyle and Audra are hiding something. And I believe Kane knows more than he is letting on." Lily's heart stopped. She had already been skeptical of Kane's recent behavior, his secrecy, his sudden disappearances, and the mysterious way he spoke of unfinished business. She hung up the phone and turned to Damien, who was with her in the room. "We have to go back," she said quietly. Damien's expression clouded, but he did not hesitate. "Let's go." As they rushed back to Genoa City, a whirlwind of betrayal, terror and desperation raged faster than any of them could control. Kyle eventually broke while on the train. His voice shook as he spoke to Billy. "We didn't intend for any of this. We became entangled in something we couldn't control." Audra gave him a warning look, but he continued. "There is a man, he has been blackmailing us. We tried to pay him off, but he prefers something else. Information. Control. And now he's up to something bigger," Billy said, his eyes narrowing. "Who is he?" Kyle looked down, humiliated. "We do not know his real name. He goes by Bishop," Audra eventually said, her voice chilly. "And if Sharon is with him, it's already too late," Billy said, slamming his hand on the table. "Then we make it not too late." Hours passed, the storm outside worsened, and the authorities eventually intervened. Victor had hired a private search team, and Lily and Damien had also joined the effort. Using Sharon's last phone signal, detectives narrowed down her whereabouts to a forested area off Route 6. Nick insisted on going with them. When they eventually arrived to the maintenance shed, they proceeded quietly, spotlights piercing through the fog. They discovered the door ajar and a rope flung on the floor, but Sharon was gone. Only one word remained on the wall, scribbled in black ink, one piece at a time. Nick collapsed to his knees. He was too late. Again. Back on the train, Audra sat alone in her compartment, looking out the rain-soaked window. Her hands trembled. Kyle had gone silent since Billy's interrogation, and the distinction between ally and enemy was blurring. She reflected on everything she had done to survive, advance in her career, and protect herself. Now it all seemed meaningless. What happens if we lose everything? She muttered to herself. Kyle returned a few minutes later, with a pale face. "We already are." They stared at each other, not as lovers or partners in crime, but as two people who might not make it through what lay ahead. Meanwhile, Sharon had been transported deeper into the woods, to an underground bunker lined with ancient Newman security equipment that had long been dumped, or so they believed. Her captor slowly disclosed portions of himself. He was once active in Newman R&D, was wrongly sacked, lost everything, and now sought payback. "You all think you're untouchable," he said. Sharon, never one to play the sufferer, challenged him, "But even the strong can bleed. This is not fairness. This is cowardice," but the man did not flinch. "And yet, here you are." As daylight neared, the tension reached a boiling point. Billy planned to confront Kane personally, believing him to be the missing connection. Victor coordinated a citywide alert with his tech team, tracing every known alias associated with Bishop. Kyle and Audra were instructed to remain aboard the train under guard. Lily arrived at Newman headquarters, demanding answers from Victor, who eventually caved and provided her the sensitive file. Years before, a discredited scientist had been working on neurotargeting software and was fired after embezzling funds. "What's the name?" "Ethan Bishop." "Bishop." Her blood ran cold. He wasn't only after Newman. He had previously loved and lost Sharon. Now he was taking everything back. The final jigsaw pieces clicked into place, but would they be enough to keep the storm from destroying them all? Ask ChatGPT. Sharon's rescue became the focal point of Genoa City as word traveled like wildfire throughout the close-knit community, leaving everyone on edge and unsure of what would come next. The ordeal had began days before when Sharon found herself caught in a scenario far more hazardous than anyone could have predicted, her typical calm shattered by the magnitude of the menace hovering over her. Friends and relatives had been searching desperately, their concern building with each passing hour, until eventually, a breakthrough occurred, a cryptic clue, a desperate phone call, or perhaps simply sheer luck led to her location. Those who loved her were relieved when she was discovered, but the aftermath was far from straightforward. The trauma stayed in her eyes, and the anxiety was clearly visible in the way she carried herself, as if she expected danger to emerge at any moment. Meanwhile, Kyle and Audra were trapped in their own tornado of dread, their lives devolving into disarray as they dealt with the consequences of secrets they had worked so hard to keep hidden. Kyle, who is usually so measured and controlled, found himself making rash judgments, his thoughts confused by the weight of his falsehoods and the fear of being discovered. Audra, the consummate manipulator, was suddenly out of her depth, her carefully prepared facade breaking under the strain. Their double panic triggered a chain reaction, engulfing others and wreaking havoc. Every discussion was fraught with tension, every glance carrying unsaid accusations, and the more they attempted to retake control, the deeper they sank into the quagmire they had made. The stakes were higher than ever, and making the wrong decision could lose them everything, their professions, relationships, and even their freedom. And then there was Billy, whose wrath was a force to be reckoned with, a storm simmering for far too long and finally ready to erupt. His rage was not explosive or transitory, but rather deeper and more deliberate, a slow burn that threatened ruin to anybody who stood in his way. The treachery he felt cut deep, driving his thirst for vengeance, and those who had mistreated him would quickly realize that crossing Billy Abbott was a decision they would regret. His rage was more than just revenge, it was about recovering his power and demonstrating that he was not to be underestimated. As Sharon recovered and Kyle and Audra worked to manage their disasters, Billy's preparations unfurled with terrifying precision, laying the groundwork for a confrontation that would leave the city reeling. The intertwined lives of these people created a web of tension, with each thread tightening as their stories intersected in unexpected ways. Sharon's rescue should have marked the end of the horror, but it was merely the start of a new chapter, one full of danger, secrets, and grief. Kyle and Audra's terror was a ticking time bomb, and their lies threatened to detonate and bring everyone down with them. And Billy's wrath? It was the spark that could set off everything, transforming their world into an inferno from which there might be no escape. The days that followed were a flurry of confrontations and confessions, alliances changing like sand in the wind, and trust crumbling with each disclosure. Sharon, despite being physically safe, battled to regain her footing, tormented by recollections of what she had been through. The individuals around her attempted to help, but their own issues made it difficult to provide the assistance she actually required. Kyle and Audra, who had once been confident in their ability to outmaneuver anyone, were now backed into a corner, their options narrowing with each passing instant. The double terror that had previously been limited to the two of them now spread to everyone in their orbit, making them unpredictable and dangerous. And Billy, icy and ruthless, pursued his targets with unwavering determination, his rage leaving no place for pity. The repercussions was unavoidable, a collision of emotions and consequences that would permanently alter their lives. In the end, Sharon's rescue was only the first domino to fall, triggering a chain reaction that no one could have anticipated. Kyle and Audra's double terror revealed the frailty of their ideas, demonstrating that even the best-laid plans can shatter beneath the weight of truth. And Billy's wrath? It served as a harsh reminder that some lines, once crossed, could never be undone. The city watched in horrified silence as the drama unfolded, the lives of these people permanently changed by what had happened. The scars, both visible and hidden, would be permanent reminders of the battles they had fought and the price they had paid. And when the dust settled, one thing became clear: no one would come out undamaged. Sharon's strength would be put to the test like never before, Kyle and Audra would have to face the repercussions of their actions, and Billy's rage would leave an unforgettable mark on everyone. The story was far from over, but one thing was clear: nothing would ever be the same again. The strain in the air was palpable, a thick blanket of dread that hung over every conversation, decision, and moment of stillness. Sharon's rescue provided temporary respite, but the underlying difficulties persisted, festering beneath the surface like a sore that refused to heal. Kyle and Audra's worry had escalated into something far more dangerous, with their fear driving them to take ever bigger risks and straining their link to the breaking point. And Billy? His rage had only gotten stronger, his resolve unwavering, and his vow to make those who had wronged him pay increased with each passing day. The city itself appeared to hold its breath, waiting for the next explosion, disclosure, or grief. These people's lives were interwoven in ways they couldn't fathom, their destiny intertwined in a plot that was both tragic and compelling. Sharon's resilience would be her most powerful weapon, but even she had limitations. Kyle and Audra's desperation would lead them down unexpected pathways, shattering their moral compass beyond repair. And Billy's rage would devour him, blurring the line between justice and retribution, leaving those around him wondering if there was any way out of the darkness he had accepted. The days passed into weeks, then months, but the scars lingered, a daily reminder of what had been lost, and what could never be recovered. Sharon's rescue, Kyle and Audra's double fright, and Billy's rage were all stories of betrayal, survival, and the costly cost of keeping secrets. It was a narrative that would be told for years to come, a warning about what happens when trust is destroyed, fear takes root, and wrath is unleashed. And as the last chapters progressed, one thing became painfully clear: some scars never ever heal, and some storms never really pass. The consequences of their decisions would reverberate, a disturbing reminder that in a society dominated by power and dishonesty, no one was truly safe. Sharon, Kyle, Audra, and Billy had all played their parts, with their lives intersecting in ways that would impact them forever. As the curtain lowered on this chapter of their lives, the one certainty was that the consequences would be felt for centuries. The end was only the beginning, and it had been far more horrific than any of them could have anticipated.